Welcome to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. I'm Deremy Dove, and I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, my tag team partner, Mr. Jose Ruiz. What's going on, man?
What's going on, Deremy, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. You know, it was pretty good doing that Oscar De La Hoya documentary
Yeah,
recap. You know, talking. We got a little bit of that itch. Boxing's really fun to talk about on here.
always. Yeah,
It's one of those special ones that we don't always do. But when we do it, I get like a little extra pep in my step talking about boxing history. So we decided we wanted to keep it rolling.
yeah.
And this fight's interesting, Jose, because we know we did one of our early episodes on '90s heavyweights. Check the archives,
Check 'em.
and there's really two great eras of heavyweight boxing: the '90s and the greatest is the '70s. And this is a fight that kind of gets overlooked when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to great fights of the decade, let alone just heavyweights of the entire decade of the '70s. This fight between George Foreman and Ron Lyle, which was Ring Magazine called it Fight of the Year in 1976. But this is one that you suggested, and I wanted to ask you what made you pick this.
Yeah, like you said, Deremy, and you're 100% right. Like this, and Ringside was right. This was fight of the year. Because what we like to do with this, we're bigger than the game, and obviously, Deremy, and if you're listening, I mean, you probably listened before. It'll be easy for us, to do these big fights, Ali Frazier, like all these huge fights, and we've done that, and we've done other big fights as well. But like, we want to make sure to bring you like these other smaller, like not as popular, like events. Even like let's just keep it to an event, and when in this case is boxing. So I remember watching this a while ago, and because I'll say this, I'm always intrigued about George Foreman overall, but pre like good guy George Foreman, like you know what I mean, like Sonny Liston esque George Foreman, and I'm so intrigued by him and what his career was, and it's one of the most like
Well,
I
let
can't
me let me jump in and ask you why George Foreman has such an intrigue for you.
because I'm trying to think, and I was trying to think like leading up to the show, and like if there's another career where an individual went from probably the most hated person in the sport to one of the most beloved people in the sport later on in a career. And I know this, it was a big 10 year gap, but because he went from like everybody hating George Foreman early on to again like him becoming one of the most popular sports figures of all time. Going making like $300 million. Like he made so much money because of endorsements and like all of that stuff. So again, Foreman always going to catch my attention, and then but this fight here, it's like we've done, we were just getting done like Oscar De La Hoya 2-part series. Oh, we talked about the 2-part series and some of the fights in there. We talked about like some of the fighters in there. We talked about having like action packed fights. You really don't see that in the heavyweight division as much. This fight was that. You know what I'm saying? Like this fight was action packed from round one to the end of the fight. With two boxers, one less known boxer, but a dynamite puncher, one of the hardest hitters in the heavyweight history. And this is not from my opinion. This is George Foreman's opinion and other fighters as well. Um, so yeah, I just thought I like for a lot of people, maybe not have watched this fight. It's gonna be a really good fight to watch. We're gonna definitely rewatch this for y'all. Um, add our own commentary to it. But I just again, it's an amazing fight. It's an action packed fight. Who doesn't love that in boxing? So for that long winded answer, that's why.
Okay, no, 'cause I think there's certain I think when you have a history, like a love of history of anything, there are certain either people, games, moments that just stick out to you and you're fascinated and you fixate on. You may love the entire history, but you fixate on certain things. I know I have it with certain athletes or coaches in sports. And so I never really heard you say like this person or this coach you're kind of like fascinated by, like in particular. And George Foreman's an interesting one. and I know your history with boxing as a boxing fan. So that's why it was interesting to hear you say that George Foreman, and it makes sense because I'm not going to lie, it might be the first time when we're deciding episodes to pick that you surprised me when you suggested it. I was kind of like, huh? Like you picked
Yeah, it
this,
just
and
came out of nowhere.
yeah, and I knew the fight, and it was a good,
Right.
but I was like shocked. I was like, where did that come from? And I kind of wanted. I didn't really dive into. I wanted to save it for the
Yeah.
show, but it's a great choice. But I was like very surprised, and that hasn't really happened in
Yeah.
the 3.5 years we've been doing this show. So that's why I wanted to ask.
And this is before we did the De La Hoya,
Mm-hmm.
episode. Like I wanted to bring this up, and because again, like you talked about the '70s being the best, span of heavyweight boxing of all time, and everybody always goes to Ali, rightfully so, right? Like Ali, Frazier, Foreman, Ken Norton, like all these great heavyweights that were there at the time, but there was also like lesser known heavyweights. Like I feel like Jerry Corey gets more fame than Ron Lyle or I'm trying to Ernie Shavers. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like people know Corey more than these two guys. And these two guys were and these are the first two that come to mind, but they're like lesser known to like maybe your novice level boxing fan. Who these were probably the Shavers is probably the most hardest hitting heavyweight of all time. And then Lyles is right on that list, a top 5 list somewhere, maybe top 10, and again, like I mean, we do this all the time on the show. Like, we want to bring these guys to light as well, And again, I'm not calling Ron Lyle one of the best heavyweights of all time. Like, he had a nice career. He had some really good wins. Um, he got knocked out a few times. He knocked some dudes out a few times. Has a very interesting story as well, backstory. I don't know. I love boxing. I love talking about these guys because it's easy to talk about Ali. It's easy to talk about Joe Frazier and all these other Hall of Fame all time great boxers. But let's talk about the Ron Lyles, the Ernie Shavers, like all these other great heavyweights as well at that time.
No, I think it's great to do that because, like you said, to me, this fight is all about redemption, and it's redemption in the ring for George Foreman. And honestly, like you said, with Ron Lyle's backstory, it's for him redemption in life. And,
Yeah.
and honestly, this fight was a redeeming, a life fight for George Foreman as well.
Yeah.
But really, in the ring, he needed to, bounce back because this is that fight that happened, 15 months after he has that monumental, crushing loss to Ali, in Zaire. And, he winds up really taking a toll on him emotionally because, like you said, everyone couldn't stand him. Everyone wanted him to lose, but he's the big favorite. So then he loses to Ali in that fight. And then he winds up, the media is just like, how could you lose? How could you weren't that great. You're not that good. And it really took a toll on George Foreman's psyche that he went from being, hey, I'm the biggest, baddest dude out there to really losing, his confidence and having really like this crisis as like, who am I as a fighter?
Right. And not only that, like it was very similar to what happened with Tyson and Buster Douglas, right? Like it was like Tyson was so unstoppable for such a long time. Then Buster Douglas comes and whoops his butt, and again, a lot of it due to Tyson not being prepared, but it was also Buster Douglas being very prepared, and kind of when you knock out the big bad guy on the block, like people don't respect that as much as they used to before. Like you're not beating these opponents by just walking into the ring and showing up like a lot of times Foreman did, like a lot of times Tyson did, and this was like that next big fight where it was kind of showing like dudes are not going to be scared of Foreman anymore. And Ron Lyle was 100% not scared of Foreman in this fight. And he was in there and he was willing to trade punches, which he absolutely did. And, his punches did a lot of damage as well. And there's fights also, and you talked about like redemption and all that stuff. There's fights that shift your career, man, like big time. And this was one for Foreman. And like you talked about, like everybody was looking at what happened with Ali and that type of loss. And his next fight, I can't remember who it was. It's slipping my mind, but he didn't look really good in that fight either. And then here comes this fight, and again, we'll definitely get into it and show y'all. But he almost loses this fight as well. And like you mentioned, like, he was really embarrassed about what happened to him, and with against Ali, and but also I think that big bad wolf type of thing, like that's going away. And if you lose that, that's all he had at this point of his career. It was just he was going to knock you out, scare you, knock you out, and leave you there. If he didn't have that, he was going to have a tough time.
No, and I do think his legacy is kind of murky in a way. I feel like
Yep.
that might be for another episode, but it gets overhyped in
Yeah.
my opinion, where George Foreman gets ranked as far as great heavyweights for that reason, which is he was a very one dimensional kind of fighter. And if someone was big or if someone could move, this gave him trouble. And I do feel like this to me is the best fight, the best win of his career over Joe Frazier, over Michael Moore. I think this fight to me is the best win of George Foreman's career for a lot of the reasons of I like doing like obviously this show, but I like having conversations about sports with a lot of people, even some fans, but non-fans, because in certain ways, these athletes are very different than us, like walking around who aren't professional athletes. Like physically, they are like, yeah, they're very different. I'll never know what it's like, you know, not just I won't be George Foreman's height and everything like that, but just to feel like, hey, I'm the biggest, baddest dude in the ring. I'm the heavyweight champ. I'll never know that feeling, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of ways, they're so similar to us, which is we all have, moments of crises. We all have moments of lack of confidence. And people, I love talking about this with people because they think athletes, they must not.
Yeah.
And I think we see a lot of times, we've had a little bit of conversations about it, but we're seeing more and more athletes talking about mental health and like those struggles. Like it may be like it's different, but it's still similar. Like they have these battles too. And to me, 1975 and 1976, they don't have the terminology that we have now. But really, he's a depressed guy.
Yep.
After that Ali loss, he's embarrassed. He's depressed. He's lack of confidence. And I think it happens in all sports, but that's I think is why I love boxing, and MMA is having that too. But my love goes greater to boxing than it does MMA, which is it's just you in there, and of all the sports where your confidence can really get rocked and your how you feel is like really like a roller coaster emotionally. Nothing to me is like that more than boxing, where it's like just from your training to the fight week and the preparation. And then once you're in the ring, you're going up and down. And when you have a loss that's devastating to you, a lot of people don't come back from it.
Right, because I think there's different types of losses too, there. I mean, like to your point, it's you can be in a ring, it's a big fight, dude hits you with a lucky shot, knocks you out, and it's just like, all right, like he hits you with and you like fans know it's like, all right, like it was a really good shot, like he would have knocked out a lot of people with that shot. You get a rematch, and whatever happens after that, like those type of losses, you know, maybe a great like fight and it was like a close decision. You know what I mean? Like you got that loss, and you can kind of, even though there's going to be a heartbreaking loss, you can almost live with it. Like, all right, like it was a close fight. Like I almost got it, almost pulled it out. And then there's fights like he had with Ali where it was just like Ali just played him. You know what I mean? Like he played him, and he outsmarted him. And people go, oh, the rope a dope. It was like, it was BS, and Ali should have fought him, and if they would have really just fought, like it wouldn't have been a close fight. Foreman would have won that, and that might be true. I don't know, but again, like boxing, and you hear me talk shit on Sugar Ray Leonard all the time. I was talking trash on De La Hoya, but like it's also like a thinking man's sport as well, and
Absolutely.
and if you can have that mental edge on somebody, and I don't mean like intimidation or anything like that, like if like your game plan is going to work, and you really like fool your opponent, like that has to be in that stage when everybody's watching, that has to be like so like detrimental to your confidence. You know what I mean? Like so depressing, man. Like to understand like this dude played me in front of millions, and I just walked right into it and just allowed it to happen. It was devastating for him.
No, and I think that's why I love boxing. It's not
Right.
a street fight.
Nope.
And guess what? A lot of times I've seen great fighters say, he didn't come in and take it from me. He didn't fight me straight up. Well, stupid. Why would they? If that goes to your advantage, you got to be ready for that. Like, who would go? They're dumb for going right into your, you know,
To your
strategy,
strengths. Yeah.
into your strengths. Like, that's why God rest his soul. I look at Marvin Hagler when he fought Ray Leonard, and whether you think Hagler won or not, I blame him for being like, but he didn't come and take it from me.
Yeah.
Why would Ray Leonard would get destroyed in that kind of a fight? Like, why would he do that? Like, I would look at Ray Leonard like, are you dumb? Why are you going toe to toe with him? If Ali tried to go toe to toe with Foreman in '74, it wouldn't have worked. So it's like, that's why it is the sweet science, and there is strategy to this, a lot of strategy, a lot of endurance, but it's a mental game. And George Foreman at this point is mental. He's fighting, in January of '76, going against Ron Lyle, a guy who I think if Foreman had beat Ali, Ron Lyles would have still fought him the same way.
Yeah.
Like, he picked a guy who, if there's a guy who like this is the ultimate test about I'll say it, your manhood, about your confidence in yourself, your confidence, and if you still want to be a fighter, Ron Lyle is like the toughest guy for you to pick. And George Foreman picked it and gave us this amazing brawl.
Yeah, because the sweet science was out the window with this fight for sure, and not to say they didn't like plan, because we've said it here in this show, Deremy, hundreds of times, like that famous Tyson quote was like, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, and that's so true, and it's just like you can walk into a fight with this great game plan that you've been working on for 6 months or 4 months, and as soon as things start happening there, you're gonna go to like just your normal like habits. You know what I mean? Like if you were trying to box a guy, and how many times we've seen that in boxing, like where you go in there and the game plan is he's going to stick and move, and he's going to try to move around and stuff like that. And as soon as they get hit a couple times, they're flat footed, they're standing there toe to toe, and they're trying to go against each other. It happened with Duran and Leonard won. Like Duran started catching him, and Leonard was like, no, I'm going to show everybody that I can go toe to toe with this guy, and then that ending word, right? So I think, and I agree with you 100%. Like for Foreman to gain his confidence back, this was the wrong dude. Like Ron Lyle was no joke. Again, like straight pit bull in the ring. It was not afraid of anyone. Didn't take any shit from anyone. And he was going to give you his best, and if you were going to knock him out, you were going to knock him out, but you were going to feel afterwards that you fought Ron Lyle. And Foreman even talks about it. Like I'm going to like butcher this quote, but he was saying like, he goes, Ron Lyle hits so hard that you don't even feel it. It doesn't even hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just, it happens, and then like, you're just getting up. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or your legs are shaking and you're weak. Like that. And he talks about this fight, like Foreman talked about this fight, and it's going to make sense if you haven't seen it before, where it's just like something changed in him, and then you hear it in Rocky. Like I know Rocky's fictional, but it was a great moment in Rocky. I think it was Rocky 5 when he was talking about Rocky, when he was fighting in like in Rocky 4 when he was fighting Drago and stuff, and how he was like, no, I think it was Creed. He was talking about this, where he was like, this dude hit me and things changed in my body and have not changed back. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it was Creed 2 when he was telling them this, and I was like, man, like that's a powerful statement there. And but it makes a lot of sense. You know what I'm saying? When you fight guys like Ron Lyle, you fight guys like Foreman, stuff like that can happen, and it happened here in this fight for sure.
No, I think the ultimate is, when you look at it, I feel like they say a piece of a fighter when you're in that ring, or you leave a piece of you in there. But it's those ultimate fights where it's like two dudes go to war with each other, and you know what? Whether there's a winner or a loser, there's a draw, but it's like both these dudes left the ring and they were never the same.
Right.
Like, they were never the same after that kind of fight. And those are the fights that, as fans, you love, but then for these individuals, it changes them. It changes who they are as people. And before we get to the rewatch, I do want to just say for Ron Lyle, a guy who
Yes.
defeated heavyweights like Buster Mathis, Oscar Bonavena, Jimmy Ellis, Ernie Shavers. He had fought Ali in '75 after Foreman lost to Ali in '74, and going into the 11th round. And remember, for people who don't know, it's 15 rounds back then, not 12.
Yep.
But going into the 11th, he's ahead on all three judges' scores cards.
Yep.
And Ali has to really rally, gets him a big right hand that rocks him, hits him with flurries. A controversial stoppage, honestly.
Yes.
Ron Lyle's corner felt like he's ahead, give him a chance to fight out of it, but they stop it. Otherwise, we could be saying going into this fight that Ron Lyle's the heavyweight champion. So Ron Lyle, hell of a fighter, hell of a story. We'll talk more about his story as the fight goes on, but Ron Lyle's no slouch either.
Right. And, rumor has it Ali wasn't, in the best of shape for that fight. They didn't take him seriously. Well, he found out what happens when you do that. And then, you look at that fight and yeah, he was up on the scorecards and stuff like that. It was a different fight for Ron Lyle. The way he was fighting, he was more of a counterpuncher, and, it was like it's a slower fight. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like, he's an action fighter. We all know what Ali brought to the table. But again, like kind of to Deremy's point, like he was no slouch, and Foreman was getting in the ring with this dude. He was hungry. He still hasn't made that real name for himself, and he wanted the title. He's trying to get a title, man, and he knew Foreman was in the way of that, and he was going to try to move him out of the way, and he does.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely does. So,
and I think to your point, the Lyle Ali at this point in '70, he's a hero to a lot of the guys he's fighting at this point, and the lore is already great. He's the only comparison in our lifetimes is what MJ was, where as far as popularity, most popular person on the planet, but also where your competitors are in awe of you, like the people who are playing. Like I only hear about MJ, where like his contemporaries are like, wow, like MJ, like who's gonna guard him? I don't want to guard him. Yeah. Ali kind of had that, and I think after the Foreman win, that lore grew even greater. And I think Ron Lyle still fought a hell of a fight, but it's that respect factor he was giving to Ali that I wonder if he kind of would have put the tempo up like he does in the Foreman fight if he wins that fight against Ali.
Yeah, it would have been very interesting, like, if he would have won that fight and, maybe he doesn't fight Foreman next. Like, who knows what happens there, and it's just so many things could have changed that day, but I agree. Very controversial stoppage there. If you haven't ever watched that fight, you should, check it out. But it's not going to be as action-packed as this fight for sure. This fight here, this Foreman Ron Lyle fight, is one of the most action-packed heavyweight fights I have ever seen since. And this is, 76. And again, I've seen, Riddick Bowe and Holyfield, Galata, and whoever else he was fighting, like all these great heavyweights when I was growing up. So those fights were action packed too, but this one here, man, was something different for sure.
All right, Jose, you ready to cue this one up?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let me get this thing going, man.
This is January 24th, 1976, at Caesar's Palace in Vegas, and interesting because, like you talked about Foreman redemption, but Ron Lyle, great story as well, and I think for people who you haven't seen it, you need to go and watch this documentary that was amazing called Facing Ali. It came out like in 2011, Jose, but it had a lot of them have sadly passed away, including, Ron Lyle now. But Joe Frazier, Foreman, Ernie Shavers, Ron Lyle, all these different fighters talking about what it was like to face Ali and they're sitting down being interviewed, and they kind of give their story as well. And that's when I first heard Ron Lyle's amazing story about where he had come from and what he'd been through. And he's really a great comeback story.
Oh, absolutely. And it gets brought up by Howard Cosell here a couple times. And, but, I mean, both these guys, like Foreman came from Fifth Ward in Houston. Like, But Ron Lyle was born in Ohio, moved to Denver. His family moved to Denver, and he was in and out of jail at a very early age. I think his first time he was in jail was like 14 or something like that, and and then gets arrested. I don't know. I remember the year when he was arrested, but and I think he gets like 15 to 25. I think the sentence was something like that, and
Yeah.
he served 9 years of that. And which is a crazy story too, how he got out of jail. Like there was like a militia takeover in there, like some militant prisoners had I think they had a CO, like a correctional officer, like captive, and he did something and got the officer out of there. And then the governor, I believe, of Colorado pardoned him and whatever. And that's how he got out. Because if that doesn't happen, we may not even be talking about Ron Lyle.
Well, and also Ron Lyle, while he's in jail, he gets stabbed and nearly dies. Has to get like over 30 something blood transfusions to stay alive. Like he. So there's a lot of these things that like it's a miracle that he's even out and that he has this Hall of Fame level type of career, and that he's in these big fights with Ali and George Foreman, because a lot of times, sadly, we know too well that story doesn't end up with that redemption song. It's that person is in and out of the system, but he was able to, through a lot of crazy things, survive, but also being able to thrive as a great fighter too.
Yeah, so we're here at the beginning of the fight, and live from Vegas, and
look at that face off.
I know, I love it. Howard Cosell's all over that,
Howard Cosell.
Ken Norton's doing the color here for the fight.
You see, both guys, Foreman shows his height. Ron Lyle's a good 6'3", 6'3.5". I don't know. I know Foreman's got a fro, so I don't know how much that's giving him a little advantage there in height. But they're both just two tall, big, good reach, heavyweights going at it here, and that's huge right there. That Foreman always had that intimidation. Ron Lyle's face to face, and he's not scared. Look at it, just winding up.
I love that beginning. He winds up and throws his super handmaker, at the beginning for the first punch of the fight.
And George ducked it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the one thing about Foreman I never really understood, and it's just defensively how he would use that turtle technique, man, and he just left himself wide open for so many punches, man. And he has to have an amazing chin, because a lot of these guys, some of these punches, he would have knocked out a lot of dudes, man. I just don't get it.
Yeah, he does have we saw his chin to me later on in his his career when he does the comeback, in the 90s and everything. But it's I'm not impressed with. I mean, he's a great. I'm not saying he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer, but I remember watching Burt Sugars gave a top 10 heavyweights on ESPN ringside, and Larry Holmes was on, and he put Larry Holmes at 10 and Foreman at 8.
No.
And Larry Holmes was pissed, and Larry Holmes was just coming at Burt Sugar I respect all fighters, but George Foreman, unless you was a slow fighter who just stood in front of you, he couldn't win. He couldn't beat you. He was mad at Burt Sugar so bad. But I agree with Larry Holmes. To me, I think it's crazy to have George Foreman over Larry Holmes as a fighter.
Yeah, Larry Holmes would do what Ali did to Foreman, for sure.
Yeah, he would have whooped him easy.
Yeah.
But there's a little feeling out here in this first round, but it's starting to throw these punches a little bit.
Yeah, but even this jab, Foreman's jab, it's just, you can see the power behind it. Yeah, and Lyle starts throwing, towards the end of the first round here. What cracks me up about Howard Cosell is just because Foreman knocks out Ken Norton really, really bad, and through this commentary, Cosell's Foreman hits tough. You know about that, right, Ken Norton?
Yeah.
Just damn, dude,
hey,
he's working with you, man.
One
Don't
thing
gotta
about Howard
embarrass him.
Cosell you got to give credit for is he didn't back away. Like,
No,
he said what he said and he stood by it.
that's the first
And
good right hand there.
that right hand, he's really nailing George. George
Yeah,
is in trouble here.
Yeah, he's
And I
just trying to
think,
hold on, and Lyle's not allowing that.
and so to me, Jose, I think imagine, you really didn't have that tough of a fight. The fight from 15 months is looming over Foreman's head,
Yeah,
and already in the first round, he's getting rocked, and he easily can tell Ron Lyle's not intimidated. He ain't going nowhere. And I think the mental psyche I'm looking at, that George is already thinking,
yeah,
like, and inside, and I think that's why I give credit to Foreman. That's why I call this his best win, is because very early on he's getting rocked, and after the toughest loss of your career, it shows what kind of fighter you are, what kind of man you are, to how you respond. And we'll see throughout this fight how both these guys respond to these
yeah,
big punches. But I give big credit to George Foreman in this fight on how he responded.
yeah. And for those listening, on the podcast, man, like that right hand was beautiful. It was just a beautiful overhand right. Foreman did not see that coming, and that becomes a pattern throughout this fight where it's just, Ron Lyle's like waiting on that Foreman jab. It's a little slow, methodical. It has a lot of power behind it, but it's a little slow. And he was just there countering that jab, that left jab with the overhand right, and does a great job
Yeah.
doing that. In that last round, he really clocked him.
And I think Lyle started the second round again with, just throwing a haymaker for a body punch, and George ducks it. And I think this is the key, what we're seeing here, Jose. As a fan, I'm loving it, but
Yeah,
as someone who loves the sweet science of boxing, the pacing that Lyle is doing here, you can't sustain it. He's going.
yeah,
It's almost like, but it's weird because he's had big fights before, but it's almost like I don't know what it is. Like, he seems like the moment's like really big, like
yeah.
nervous energy.
Yeah, and also Foreman at this point, he's doing a great job keeping him away a little bit, and now he's letting his right hand go right behind that jab. Whereas we all know, like that Foreman right hand is no joke either.
Yeah,
So Foreman's getting a little more comfortable in there. Again, to your point, like 16 months off, that's a long time. You know what I mean? Like, and he after this fight, he talks about it. Like, I, that he gives credit to Ron Lyle. I give Foreman that credit. Like, but he said he was definitely rusty in there, and it showed. So now Foreman just
look at this big shots by Foreman.
Yeah, with that left, like a hook uppercut type of punch. And now these two guys are going to just start throwing punches, man. Yeah, that jab to the body is always like a tough one there.
Oh yeah,
It'll stop you right in your tracks,
the body shots are always the toughest.
Yeah. But that 1-2, oof, another left.
He's throwing that uppercut. He's trying to land it.
Yeah. But Lyle, he was hurt, but you can see he's starting to like get his bearings a little bit.
Well, he's doing what you got to do to keep the fight going. Is he's showing? Look at that. That stare down is just great, man. When you get fighters like that venom going, man, it's awesome. But Lyle showed. I think that's why. If his hands were down a little bit, you could have maybe made a case for like stop it. But he showed enough to me of like he's got some life in him, which is what you got to do. It's really hard. But if you get rocked like that, you're starting to get hit with. You got to show some life. If you're just covering up, which if that's the case, if you can't continue, then okay, fine. But if you feel like you can continue, you got to show some life, or you can't blame the ref for stopping it.
Got to throw some punches. Yeah. So there was another controversy here, Deremy, where there's 3-minute rounds, and Howard Cosell does a great job bringing this up. That round was only 2 minutes, and this was a 3-minute. These are 3-minute rounds, obviously, and he said he noticed it was only 2 minutes, and then the official score or whatever said that their clock, ABC's clock, was wrong. But it was not. Like, it comes later on. Ken Norton announces it later on in the fight. He was like, no, they came back and said, yeah, that round was only 2 minutes, which is...
Well, it feels like if you watch it, like it felt like a very quick round,
Right.
like too quick.
Yeah. I don't know how the hell that happens.
Hey man, human error, I guess. I don't know.
Oof, man.
Yeah, and I think we're getting the third round, and I would say like, yeah, I agree with Ken Norton. Like,
Yeah.
first round was Ron Lyle, second round was definitely George.
Yeah, and again, now you can see that Lyle's starting to throw that right again. You know, he's going to catch him again for sure. Oof, another one. Yeah, he's Lyle is playing a dangerous game, man. Like he's taking a couple shots and then trying to get that right in there. But some of these shots you may not survive.
Yeah, he's lulling them in here, but what I like about George, he's staying on his feet pretty well too. He's moving,
Yeah,
and he's controlling the pace of this right now.
yeah. You can hear his corner telling him to throw to the body, and he's not really throwing to the body. But then he does there, of course.
Yeah, I know. You get a little bit there, but you know, man.
Yeah,
I tell you what though, we just had the big Crawford Spence fight, but it's not just because of how dominant the fight was for Crawford, but it's just not the same, man. Like
no,
when you watch this, I can feel it through the screen. I mean, it's 47 years ago, but like it's just a different kind of feel. It's like we had a big fight. It was the Super Bowl, but in a different way.
yeah.
And it's like I miss that. Like I just do. Like it's just
I felt
different.
that with Crawford Spence though. Like I
I didn't
felt the
feel it.
no, I did. I felt the bigness, like the
I
event
felt
type of
I
thing.
felt attention. I didn't feel it was like everything stopped.
No, see, I don't
Nah.
know. I wouldn't like. I had to watch that. You know what I mean? Like it was like I planned my day around it type of thing, and I don't know. I felt it was big, man. I don't know.
I thought it was big for what boxing has been outside of like Jake Paul,
Ugh,
and stuff
yeah.
like outside of that stuff. So I was like cool with that, but it's not the same. And I know it's going to be hard because there's more distractions. There's more, streaming. There's all these different things now than it was back in the 70s and
Oh
80s and
yeah,
even
yeah.
90s. But no,
Oof,
it's not this.
another right. I agree. Oh, compared to like back then, no, absolutely not.
Well, and also I didn't feel any mystery. I thought Crawford would win. Like I kind of was like, I didn't think Spence would give him that. Look at this stuff.
Jeez,
Down goes George Foreman.
and he's lucky he didn't hit him with that uppercut when he was down. This fight would have been over.
Mm-hmm.
He'd have been disqualified for that. Foreman got right up though. I'll give him that.
But I think that's the difference though. There's something, and you see it in certain fights, especially in heavyweights. I feel where it's like they get winded so fast and they get spurts of energy,
Yeah,
and they like, I gotta do my damage in that spurt. And then if they don't get them in that spurt of energy, then they're just flat.
yeah.
But I tell you, it's what Jimmy Johnson said: fatigue will make a coward of us all. Like
Yeah.
you get worn
Oof,
out, but look at
man.
the haymakers being thrown by
They're
both
just throwing
guys here.
hooks. Yeah. Like there's no jabs anymore. Like now it's just like right hook against left hook.
Look at that.
Cosell's going crazy. I love it.
Unreal though.
Yeah,
The
this now
resilience of Foreman.
these dudes are fighting. It's just a street
Yeah.
fight at this point.
Foreman to get knocked down and then to come back and now knock down Lyle. And I'm
Yeah.
surprised Lyle got up after that, the way
Yeah.
he went down.
Yeah, another right hand by Foreman.
And we got more knockdowns coming. It's not over.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two warriors just battling, man.
Yeah, so if you hear a little little static there. This fight's in '76, so
Let's
just
say 1976.
bear with us, please.
Look at the haymakers by Foreman, though.
I know. Oh my god, this isn't
That's
artistic.
true. It's a
Yeah,
slugfest, but that's what fight fans want, though.
yeah. Oof.
Man,
Oh man, what a
look at
combination! An
this
uppercut, left hook.
by Ron
Foreman.
Lyle. Just
Yeah.
and that Foreman's got something back. They're just
Oh, I
yeah.
thought
Look
it was
at how
over there.
George.
Yeah,
Look
I
at
thought
how
it was.
George goes down.
Dude, he's stumbling to the corner, man.
Both guys are just stumbled out. What a round of boxing, man. This round should be up there with Bo Holyfield won that 10th round, the first round of Hagler Hearns. This round is right up there, man. What a great round of
Boom,
fighting.
boom. Oh man, two back-to-back hooks, and they're just leaving each other wide open. Oh man, he just melted them on the canvas.
And both time the time that Lyle got knocked down to the second time that Foreman got knocked down, it looked like they just dropped. And I'll be honest, I think majority of the heavyweights of
Yeah.
that era don't
Yep.
get up. Not just like any like I think it shows like the toughness that both these guys have.
Yeah, yeah. They like you mentioned earlier, there. I mean, like both these guys are fighting. There's no belts here involved, but they're fighting for a little more than a belt, and there's a lot of pride in this for each of them. You know, like it's definitely a big fight in their careers, like to move forward if they want to look at a title shot again. And I think you can see like these dudes are feeling that pressure, and they want to
When we
make
go into
sure,
the
like,
fifth round.
yeah, they want to make sure they show out a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's a. You look at who are the intimidators. You got these two, and you throw in Ernie Shavers.
Yep.
Like these are the baddest dudes on the block as far as intimidate. Now we know Ali's the GOAT, he's the greatest. Joe Frazier's great. There's other great. Ken Norton's great. But this is a battle of hey, who's the baddest man on the block here?
And the crazy part is those names, most of those names that you mentioned, both these dudes knocked them out, except Ali. You know, like Lyle destroys Ernie Shavers. You know, Foreman destroys Frazier
Frazier.
twice,
Yeah.
and Ken Norton. You know, like these are no joke, man. As you can see in this fight here, man, they would have knocked out a lot of other different guys.
That's why the 70s is the crown jewel for the heavyweight division. And both guys are barely they're just staggering right now in this fifth round.
I mean, because now you got fatigue kicking in, but you're also like being hit by some bombs.
It's just a war of attrition right now.
Man.
Who can last?
Yeah, it's like that one shot that like if you get hit by, you may not get up. Man, Lyle with an uppercut right hand.
It's almost like Lyle gets like these little bursts at times and just enough to just do something.
But he's getting hit.
But George is coming, yeah.
Yeah. Now he's like tease him up right there. I'm surprised the ref didn't jump in. This is 76 though. Oh man, another right, another left, another left, another left. Man. There's no boxing, man. Like Foreman's just teeing up on him.
Just a street fight. At this point, you got to stop it here.
You can hear them screaming into the ref to stop the fight, and the ref's not even nowhere close to them.
He don't want to get hit by them haymakers either. That's why.
Yeah.
He said, "I'm gonna let these two dudes just throw them." And I think to me the punch, it's like when Lyle would land his, you could see them more, at least on TV. Like they were like those crisper, like wow, like look at him like whip it. Foreman's just these like big, just like dunk, da dunk, da dunk, da dunk. But you know, like they're powerful and they're just wearing on you. Because to me, when Lyle hit Foreman, you were like, oh yeah, you see it. Some of George's shots you see, but it's just more like a relentless, like punishing. He's just dunk, da dunk, da dunk, da dunk coming at you.
Yeah, it's like that country strength. You know what I mean? Like
you said, Fifth Ward, Houston.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like how he gives credit to Lyle. Yeah, because was this after or before the Foreman Five? This was before. No, this
This
was
is
after
after
the
the
Foreman
Foreman Five,
Five. Yeah,
which was like an exhibition kind of
it
thing.
was super weird. And if you're not familiar with the Foreman Five, like it's George Foreman fought five guys in one night, to kind of show he was still. This is after he lost to Ali, and he just wanted to show, that he was still like the heavyweight champ and like the best fighter in the world. Ali was commentating, during that fight, so they were like yelling at each other. But the five dudes he fought were bums. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of fans started booing him and stuff like that during all this and screaming Ali, Ali, which didn't help an individual who's, probably battling depression and things like that, thinking like he's going to do this exhibition and like, to get in like good graces, I guess you want to say, with these fans, and it backfired on him. You know what I mean? Like, and then you come back and you have this fight here. Now, a fight like this will put you in good graces with fans and stuff like that. For
Yeah,
sure.
George said it that this is the toughest man he ever fought, the hardest hitter he ever fought. And he said that he won this fight due to Lyle's exhaustion. So I mean, it's just something else. Like this fight, and I will stick by it. People may say, "What about Joe Frazier?" And all those things, and I'm like, nah, that was a. I mean, don't get me wrong. He did what he had to do. He won the fight, but that was set up. Like it was just like that style. Joe Frazier has never beaten George Foreman. Like he was shorter. He had to
Yeah.
take punches to give them. It was set up for him. The Michael Moore, I know he was older. That's a cool thing, but he was getting whooped by Michael Moore for all those rounds,
Yeah.
and it was like Michael Moore just got too cocky, and
Stood
Foreman
in
let it
front of him.
go.
Yeah, he stood in front of him.
So it's like a great 1-2 by George, but really the fight was Michael Moore's. This to me is the ultimate George Foreman fight, and it's something that happens when everything's against him and everything is like it's so easy to be, hey, you had the most embarrassing loss, you got egg on your face, people are now thinking you're a joke, and you fight Ron Lyle and you have a war like no one's seen in that era. You gotta give him credit for it.
Yeah, I mean, it was very easy for him, and a lot of people would have understood if he would have folded. You know what I mean? Like, and took an L at this fight, and especially looking at some of the shots that we just finished watching him take. So yeah, I agree with you. I agree. It's like I think the biggest statement was the first Frazier fight. Like I think it was just like I've arrived. Like what I'm saying. Like I think he put a stamp on the heavyweight division after that fight. Because not only, I mean, we all know, like he didn't just beat Frazier. He dropped him 6 times in what 2 rounds. Like it was crazy and embarrassing. He picked him up off the air. Like I mean, he picked him up off the ground. And it was an incredible exhibition of power, that fight. But so I think for me, I think that's his biggest win. Even though, like you said, like I know the styles make fights, and Frazier's style was there was no way he was going to be able to beat Foreman again. They fought again, and Foreman knocks him out again, with a crazy uppercut and just put Frazier right in the corner, just sitting on his butt. But again, like I just think that put him in the heavyweight. Obviously, he was the heavyweight champion, but that put him like number one in the division. Even with Ali there, people are looking at Foreman like as the best heavyweight. But looking at everything that he was going up against, I think this is like one of his like him showing his toughness. You know what I'm saying? Like 100%. This fight here, because a lot of dudes would have just give up and just took the L here.
Well, we hadn't seen his mental toughness
Right.
tested. When we
Right.
saw it tested against Ali, it looked like he folded.
Yep.
It looked like, hey, you had this chance to take him out. You're getting these punches. You didn't really hurt Ali, even though he did hurt him. But hey, Ali made it seem like you didn't hurt him. And then it looked like it took me a long time when I watched the Ali Foreman fight, and I watched that fight a million times over the years because it looked like I know Ali hit him, But I'm like, look, like you just got gassed out, bro. Like you didn't get hit by that big of a shot. When you rewatch and slow it down, Ali gets some good shots in there.
Yeah,
I still believe you just gassed out though.
he
Like
did.
George was just done, and then that's why he goes down. And I still feel like, did you stay down because you were just gassed out, or were you hurt? So his mental toughness to me wasn't shown throughout his career. This fight showed that, and the only thing I can compare it to at the top of the dome is what happened with Duran as that embarrassing loss to Sugar Ray Leonard, where the no mas, and then he has that fight against Davey Moore in Madison Square Garden, and he's an underdog, and people are thinking he's going to lose, and it's his birthday, and Davey Moore's a tough fighter, and he winds up just whooping on Davey Moore at the Garden, and he really kind of got back in the graces with the fans, and the Garden fans are singing "Happy Birthday" to Duran. It's like another story of redemption. Like he needed, you could tell, like Roberto
Yeah.
needed that for his psyche. Like it was like affected. And I feel like George not as doesn't show as much as Roberto did, but after this fight, he needed this kind of win for his psyche.
Right. No, and I agree. And then after this, he fights again Frazier for the second time, knocks him out. There's a couple other knockouts with some like smaller fighters. But to go back to him gassing out, right, against Ali, he gasses out in Puerto Rico against Jimmy Young. And, that was kind of like the end of it there. And that's when he retired and, for the 10 years and, did everything that he did there. But, so to go back to like what we were talking about, they were blaming it on like the heat and all that there in Puerto Rico. So I mean, there's a pattern there, right? Like what I'm saying, like the type of fighter that he was, it was like if he doesn't knock you out in the first 5 rounds, you had a good shot of beating him. You know what I mean? Like, because again, like he was going to punch himself out. Defensively, he was not really strong. Like he was not a really good defensive fighter, and a couple guys did that to him, and it kind of like showed out. Here, he almost loses, even though it was in within 5 rounds, because again, defensively, he was super suspect. So I know he's a great heavyweight for sure, but he had a lot of flaws in his game as well.
I think if Ron Lyle's in a little bit better conditioning, he wins this fight. Honestly, that's really what helped George Foreman to me. Now, that Foreman didn't fight a heck of a fight, but I think Lyle. Like I said, I don't know if it was due to emotion because Lyle has he's gone deep in fights. We have seen Ron Lyle do that, but I feel like if it was just or if he thought I got to get him quick, I got to go after him. So maybe that was part of the strategy in his mind. But if he could have paced himself better, I think Ron Lyle would have won this fight.
Yeah, if he would have went in the same game plan he went in with against Ali, he would have won this fight. Because I don't know how many more rounds Foreman had in him with that power. I mean, the power is always going to be there, but that activity I don't think was going to be there too much after even this fifth round. Because even the fifth round, there was a lot of like him just standing there throwing like a couple left hooks and just standing there because again Lyle's not really throwing any more punches and he was able to tee off. But if Lyle's moving and keeping him busy, it would have definitely been a different story.
No, and I think it's sad. Like we're talking about it, and I'm glad you suggested this episode. It's not really a part of Foreman's legacy. People
Right.
don't talk about this fight, and they should,
Mm-hmm.
and that's wrong. But I feel like if Lyle wins, it really changes his legacy. If he can add George Foreman to that, we know the heavyweights he's beaten,
Right.
like as boxing fan, by people who love boxing history. But I think if you would start to if you could put George Foreman on there, it would start with he beat George Foreman,
Yep.
Buster Mathis, Bonavena, all these guys. So I think if Lyle would have won this would have been a big legacy builder for him if he would have gotten this win.
Yeah, that puts him at a different level. He might fight Ali again. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe he's fighting other fighters like Frazier in this point. Like, because Frazier fought Foreman right after this. So who knows? Maybe if he beats Foreman, he's fighting Frazier next. Like that would have been an interesting fight too to see at the year after this. So, but again, like we talk about it here, Deremy, all the time when it comes to like legacies and like what ifs and win here, win there, how much it can change in like a person's or a fighter's career or like a team or a coach, whoever. Like, and this was one of those like that he, like looking back, you know what I'm saying? Like years after, Lau was like, man, if I could have just got that one, things would have really changed for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, because even when he fought Ali, he fought a warm up fight in Canada, I think it was, or something like that, and he didn't look good. And people were saying, "Oh, maybe Ali shouldn't fight this guy." He almost loses that big fight because he didn't look good against the other guy. I can't was it Jimmy Young that he was fighting? No, I don't think it was Jimmy Young, but it was somebody else in Canada somewhere. But again, like you never know when that can happen. That one loss here or that bad outing, whatever the case, it will hurt you and hurt you in your career. This one was one of those that it was like, man, like if he could have got this win, because you see like the Hagglers, like all these guys who I don't want to call it like bad luck, but it was just always. I mean, Hagler definitely got over humps, but like you hear guys like they just couldn't get over that hump. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's just like he's one of those guys, and this was one of those humps where if he would have just had this win, he would have got over it, and that would have propelled him to one of the top heavyweights in the division at that point.
There's so many great fights in the 70s with these heavyweights. Where would this rank for you as far as the great fights of the 70s in that great heavyweight class? Where would you put this on your list, Jose?
Man, this is a when it comes to like action and all that, man, I would have to put this for me like in my top 10. Maybe like lower top 10. Like
Are you talking about of all time or
no,
of the 70s?
Like just the 70s. No, on my list on the 70s. No,
okay.
Not all time. No.
That's all I was like, what?
No, I don't like this fight that much, but
okay.
Definitely no. You have to put this up there. I mean, I'm not putting it up there with Zaire and like any of those fights and like Madison Square Garden, like Frazier Ali, none of that. But I mean, this thing was action packed. This was a lot of fun to watch. We were talking about sweet science and things like that. Like you didn't get too much of that in this fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, and for me, like I'm a purist when it comes to this sport, man. And I love watching guys who put together a game plan. And you referenced Crawford Spence. Like what Crawford did was masterful. And he just made a really good fighter look like a terrible fighter. And I just like seeing things like that. I like watching like again we talked about Ali Foreman, what Ali did, physically, but he mentally what he did there too. Like I think that was like super cool to see that. Or you can see game plans going together when Ali Frazier won, like, and then you add on like the heart on top of that, and like the moment as well. Like this moment wasn't a big moment, like this was just a fight on ABC that people thought Foreman was going to knock this dude out, and it became something great. I can't put it up there with these other fights.
It's in my top 10.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I think to me the best fight of the 70s heavyweights is Thriller in Manila. Like I gotta put that as my number one of those fights. Like Ali Frazier 3.
Oof. Over Ali Frazier 1.
As the fight, yeah. Ali Frazier 1 for me is the bigger historical. It means more because it was the first time and what that represented. But if I compare the two fights, Ali Frazier 3 to me was a better just fight. Ali Frazier 1 is more personal because of just all that represented culturally.
Right.
Ali Frazier 3 was forget the belt. The belt didn't matter. It was we're trying to have a championship of each other. It's 1-1. This is the biggest rivalry. You're my biggest rival. I'm your biggest rival. Who's going to get it? And it went down to the wire. And it's a story. Ali's nailing him early on in the early rounds. In the middle rounds, Frazier's wearing on Ali. Then later, Ali gets him. And then it just winds up being, and that's how close these two guys were. It's just who could outlast the other guy. If Joe could have maybe faked his way with his bad vision, Ali wouldn't have gotten off that stool. Ali, but hey, Eddie Futch said, Joe, you can't see, it's done. Both guys were just worn out, and both guys, we can honestly say after that fight, were never the same.
Nope.
boxers or people. Like they left a big part of themselves at that ring in Manila. So that's my number one. That's like the best fight. Like it's just an epic
No,
battle. So that's one for
it's a
me.
great one. Yeah, I can't go Frazier Ali one is my number one. That's just my favorite. I know we did a episode on that. Check the archives, and
Check them.
it was fun to watch it again. Then you know what I mean, like, and
It's my number two.
yeah, and I've seen that fight hundreds of times, and it's just man, like I'm just astounded, like on like the sound of the punches. Like we were talking about that when we were watching it. And it was just like, man, these dudes were trying to like kill each other. And then like you said, like with three, it was they were fighting for the championship of themselves. Like this was the first one, and it was just like I gotta beat this dude. Like you know what I'm saying? Like and it was they didn't know two more were coming.
Well, one is the most like we talked about on that episode, the most hyped sporting event ever. So one is special as far as the guy who loves history and historian. One is more fascinating to me than three. But if I gotta go fight to fight, I have to put my bias out. I think three is there. Ali Foreman is a tough one. Where do you put Ali Foreman on your list?
That's like right outside my top five. I would go maybe like 6, 7. I don't know. I just think like you know it wasn't. It was like a lot of it was some action, but you know even like even the biggest Ali fans would say like yeah the rope a dope like it was smart and all that, but I don't know. I don't know. I all three Frazier fights I would put over that.
Yeah. A lot of the Ali Norton fights are great.
Yes.
Honestly, they don't get talked about enough. A lot of the Ali Norton fights are great too. So
and he split with Ali, right? Didn't he won one, right?
He won one and Ali won two. But if you watch the Facing Ali documentary, I think Forman said it best where he's like, I don't think Muhammad Ali ever beat Ken Norton. And that's the thing. I don't think Ali ever beat Ken Norton. And style, it's just styles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think Ken Norton's style just threw Ali off. But I honestly do think, I don't, even the fight that Ali, the two fights that Ali won, I don't think he really beat Ken. Especially the third fight, which I think was also in 76 in Yankee Stadium. There's that 30 for 30 short about, the police.
Yeah.
They're on strike and, how crazy it is in Yankee Stadium. And Norton really should have won that fight and is tagging him. And he kind of does what De La Hoya in Trinidad.
Yep.
He lets him loose, like doesn't really fight. And then they give it to Ali. But I think Ken Norton won that fight too. But those are great fights. There's just so many of these, like,
I know,
great fights at heavyweights in the 70s.
I know. It was such a talented division at that time, man. And again, you had like your superstars, then you had the Ron Lyles, who in any other era, if he's fighting in the 80s, it's Larry Holmes, Ron Lyle. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just like if you put these guys in different spaces, they're doing a lot, they're winning a lot more fights. I think Lyle lost like 7 fights. Like, I don't think that happens in the 80s. You know what I mean? Especially the early 80s or even the 90s. Yeah, that's probably going to happen again. But it's just interesting, man. It's just like super fascinating. Like so much can change if like things just shifted a little bit for a couple guys, and it didn't. And he was stuck in he was stuck in the best division of all time, so, but he held his own. Credit is due for sure.
Mm-hmm. And if you guys, I tell everybody, watch Facing Ali.
I'm gonna watch that tonight. I got a bag of veggie chips. I started to see that, then I had to get into something. I'm gonna watch that tonight.
You gotta watch it because it's phenomenal. And if all these great heavyweights we're talking about, they're talking about to face Ali, but you also get their backstory too. And to hear Ron Lyle talk about his backstory, and honestly, you can get emotional. Him talking about like that fight with Ali, and the director asking him like, "Well, are you mad they stopped it?" And he goes, "Nah, man." He's like, "I'm fighting Ali." He's like, is Muhammad Ali. He goes,
Yeah.
without him, you're not talking to me right now. You're not talking about, you don't care about Ron Lyle. It's Muhammad. And that's what's cool to see all these years later. These guys, mine's like Joe Frazier, which we all know why.
Yeah.
But like these guys were, boxing was a big sport, but like you're not getting the payday. Like you're hearing the stories about these guys, like a Ron Lyle. You're fighting just because, hey, this is your way just to get out of, being like just at the bottom here, man.
Yeah.
But you're not thinking about these like huge payday. Muhammad Ali changed all that, and so I tell, if you want to hear a lot about these great '70s heavyweights who you don't know, that's the key right there to watch Facing Ali, and you're getting all about them. So it's a must watch.
Yeah. I mean, because again, Deremy said it. I'm in agreement. Like, in the '90s were great. Like the '90s were amazing. Yeah, it's the '70s, that division, that era. Whew, man, there's some amazing talent there for sure, man. And if you want to watch some more of these fights, go right ahead. You know what I mean? Like, check a lot of these out if you haven't been watching them before. I thank God for ESPN Classic, because a lot of these when I was young were on there. And
Same,
it
right
was fun to watch, and it's a great dive into like boxing history for sure. If you haven't done it yet.
And I'll end it on this. For me, it's we talk about when we do boxing about ducking people, and Jose said it, that I grew up in the '90s, so that was a fun time to see heavyweights. But a lot of those guys, due to some funky circumstances, some things that no one could have predicted too, they didn't fight each other at the
Yeah.
right times. So it was like the boxing division of talent, but also of the bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
In the '70s, these guys, they fought each other, and oh, wait a minute, you think I'm skipping out on you? No, I'm gonna fight you again. I'm
Yeah.
gonna fight this guy just so I can show you. I'll fight him, then I'll fight him. Foreman goes through this battle in January with Ron Lyle. Later on that year, he's fighting Joe Frazier again. You know what I mean? Like, these guys weren't skipping. So that's why the '70s is king right there, because everybody was fighting each other, and they were fighting multiple times, and you're getting them at different stages, different peaks, but no one was running from anybody.
Yeah, you couldn't. It's not like before, and it wasn't 17 belts. You know what I mean? Like it was just, it was pure, man. It was like what you want in boxing, and excuse me, what's been missing in boxing for a long time, and again, like I guess I'll end this. Like, Jeremy referenced Crawford Spence. Like, how long did that take to happen? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, and not only how long did it take, it almost didn't happen again. You know what I'm saying? Like, Pacquiao Mayweather, how long did that take to happen? It took way
Too
too
damn long.
long, and honestly, if it happens earlier, and again, like, that's when, like, some of these guys, like the Leonard, De La Hoyas, and I'll put Mayweather in that class too, where it's like they wait a little longer to fight these guys because they know, like, it's a lot easier of a fight. If they fought 5 years ago, 5 years prior to that, not De La Hoya, Mayweather and Pacquiao, it's a different fight, and Pacquiao's probably going to win that fight in my opinion. But it's just, you couldn't do that in the '70s. You had to if you were a top 2 contender, top 3 contender, you had to fight your way up, and you're fighting a great Hall of Fame fighter. You know what I mean? Like, it's made you step your game up, and it's just, again, there's certain eras I wish I was like old enough to be a part of, and obviously '76, I wasn't even born. None of us were born here, but it's just, like, if I can pick eras, I'm like, man, like, that would have been a cool era to been a little older and watching all this stuff live.
Absolutely. So please, I want you guys to watch this first, and then do like Jose is going to do.
Yeah.
Watch the Facing Ali doc, because I think it's one. We talk about sports documentaries all the time. I think this is one of the best ones that's so under the radar that people don't talk about. Facing Ali. So please watch that, and let us know what you think about where this fight ranks as far as the great fights of the heavyweights in the '70s. Do you agree with Jose? Is number 1 Ali Frazier 1? You agree with me? Ali Frazier 3 is number 1. Let us know, man. But please like, subscribe, follow us on YouTube. Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. You can follow us on Twitter at Bigger Game Pod. Follow us on Instagram at Bigger Game Pod. And we love talking to the people, so let us know what you think. But Jose, man, this was a great show to do with you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I know we've been in like our boxing little island right now, but we have some more stuff, man, like coming up. And you mentioned sports documentaries. There's a bunch of them coming out in August, so that have come out and are coming out. You know, a lot of college football is on our minds, Deremy, and you know, it's going to be exciting. I can't wait for the rest of this month to see what we got cooking for everybody.
Absolutely. So for the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jose Ruiz, I'm Deremy Dove. Thank you guys for listening to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. Take care.
Peace.